So what we're looking at here is a demonstration site. So the information you're looking at, it's not real information or anything. Where we're at too is that we're in the new look, remembering that you can toggle between the new look and the old look by using that toggle option up the top. The benefit of the new look is that our information about the red light setting here is actually right there available. It doesn't move like it does with the actual tip of the day. So you'll notice the whole of New Zealand is currently at red light setting, and this is applicable from the 24th of January, where the whole country went into the red light setting. When we click into here, what it does is opens up a new information and the publication we've provided you about what to do in Infocare. So quite simply, you've got the options of the emergency closure, the EC12 service open no attendances, which you need to get approval from the ministry to use. And you've also got EC12 service open with attendances. So these are the options that you've got to select in your centre calendar from the 24th of January. We've also got down here important notes. So for any days that you were not planning to open, it's not that you couldn't, you were planning not to open, it would actually be service closed, school holiday. Remembering we've got statutory holidays coming up in April as well. Who knows what light setting will be at that stage, but just things to bear in mind of other options you may need to be selecting in your centre calendar. What's important too is for any children that you're not entitled to claim funding for under the MoE guidelines, click here. Have a look at the bulletin. So you should get the bulletins via email. If you don't, you can Google the Ministry of Education here, Pānui, and be able to have that. I've obviously got this saved as a favourite because we regularly keep up to date with the information. Remembering we get the same information at the same time that you do. So then sometimes we are a little bit slower to respond with what you need to do, and that's because we need to make a plan for that as well. So when we look at the latest Pānui, when we come into it, they provided us with a very helpful template. So you can see that there's bits of information about health and safety, temporary medical exemptions, temporary changes to subsidies, etc. So they're giving us lots of information in there. Now, part about the actual funding side of things under the traffic light settings is that they've given us a funding guide for red light. Here is our funding guide. Okay, nice and easy table, and I'm hoping that you can see that clearly. I'm just going to zoom in a little bit more. So the latest information that's come in PDF form from the ministry yesterday is, number one, children attending fewer days than normal. So this is the likes of our Rule 1, our Rule 2, and it isn't stipulated here, but when we're talking about an EC12 exemption, that would be for Rule 3 as well, attending for fewer hours than enrolled to attend. Because when we're talking about our non-attendance, sporadic, etc., that's around the frequent absence. So what it's saying here is apply the EC12 exemption to the absence rules for all permanently enrolled children. So our recommendation, which I'll take you through, that's what we're advising you to do, is to select the EC12 exemption in your centre calendar that will be applied for all permanently enrolled children. Now, what we've got here is under 2, parents choosing to keep their children home. So this is our continuous absence rule. This is our normally 3-week rule. While we're under the red light setting, you'll notice here that the ministry has said for longer than 4 weeks. So the exemption to the absence rules for all permanently enrolled children, you don't need any paperwork unless a child is away for longer than 4 weeks. Then parents need to let you know in writing when the child is intending to return, called a statement of intent. You'll notice that there's no special forms or emails, a text message is fine, and it needs to include a planned date for return. For clarification on exactly what that needs, that would be a question for the ministry. So because we're managing the EC12 exemption for the majority of children, the way that we manage the minority of children who you may not have that statement of intent to return is where we've given you the advice about selecting no funding for those children. So when we come to our pānui here, so for the children that you haven't received the statement of intent to return, that's where you select no funding. Ultimately, the ministry is wanting you to ensure that the children actually haven't left your service, haven't relocated, haven't decided to pull their child out permanently. Because if they have left, then you are not entitled to claim funding. Let's have a look. Now, the other important information that I gave you is that this is from the 24th of January, which was, of course, in a previous funding period. So if you did lose funding in that last week of January, because you're making changes, it may be that you need to resubmit your RE7. So because we are looking at making changes into a previous period, you may need to resubmit it. Now, I'm just going to another test site. This is where we break things and try and test and everything like that. So what you see in here is of course, not real information, but one of the things that you would want to do is actually check to see if that is the case. So for example, when I come to reports, when I come to child reports, and when I come to attendance, what I want to do is check to see if there was any child that lost funding due to the 3-week rule, for example. So when we're looking at January, so you can navigate using your previous month, next month, etc. When we look at January for monthly, when I click print here, what you'd be looking for is any absences that are highlighted in yellow. This indicates where the 3-week rule has been invoked because the child continued to be absent. Now, if you've got the notice of intent to return, etc., and it could be that you are actually now entitled to claim the funding, so then this would impact your previous funding, you'd need to resubmit your RE7. Like too, if you had any children break the frequent absence rule for the 4th consecutive month in January, because not all regions it had exemptions and everything like that. That was when we were under the alert level settings. So if there was any children that lost funding due to frequent absence in January, that too is where you would need to resubmit your RE7 return. So that's really important that you know. If you're making changes in your previous funding period, you need to resubmit. So what are we actually doing? So coming back to our demo site, to apply the EC12 exemption for all permanently enrolled children, we come to Centre and we come to Calendar. Now what we're doing is from the 24th of January, you're selecting one of those options that we gave you in your timetable. So in the new look version, of course, you can start typing and selecting. Under this scenario, I'm pretending that the service was open and there were at least some children attending. So going through the process of selecting the EC12. Then we can go to next month. And because we're still at the red light scenario, selecting EC12. Oops, don't need to do it for Saturday. Just to note that when you are only licensed during the week, you can completely ignore the Saturday and Sunday columns. You don't need to select no charge or anything like that. Now let's pretend for this scenario that we did actually have an emergency closure selected in the calendar. Now, of course, this needs to be while we're at the red light. The different phases in the red light don't have any impact on the information from the ministry. Quite simply, while we're at red light, it's about applying the EC12. Now, for myself, me pretending I'm a service provider, I'm guessing that we won't be going to the orange light anytime soon. So I'm just going to do it for the rest of the week as well. Because what you'll remember too from previous times potentially is that when you've made changes to the centre calendar, and it's in retrospect, it's in the past, you need to remodify your sign-in sheet. So we're going to have a look and see what that looks like. Now that I've selected EC12 in my centre calendar, I'm just going to click update. Now, like I mentioned, we've updated the centre calendar. So now what we need to do is modify our sign-in sheets from that period of time. So we're just going to go 24012022 and click search. And that brings up our sign-in sheets from the 24th of January. So to apply that exemption, you effectively need to reopen your sign-in sheets. So to do that, we simply, and we need to do it for all rooms or all home-based, whatever it is. So we simply select it. And then what we do is we just go next day, which opens the next day. A little tip too is that if you just click into a blank space and then hit end on your keyboard, it'll take you down to the end of the sign-in sheet. That's just a Windows function. So we are simply going through the process of applying that EC12 exemption to all of the sign-in sheets. What you'll notice too is that when we get to the emergency closure, we will need to record all of the children as being absent. Oh, great, it's alerted me. You set, day is set to emergency closure in the calendar, so all children need to be marked absent. So you can click here to select all of the children, come here to mark them absent. Next day, and once again, it's alerted me. So quite simply going through the child daily sign-in sheets up to and including today to apply that exemption. You may choose to, at the end of a week, think, okay, I don't think we're going to red light the next week, so you may choose to apply that for the coming weeks as well to save you needing to re-modify your sign-in sheets. Nearly done. And so then if you do have multiple rooms, then what you would do is go back to the 24th of January and repeat that process for all of your sign-in sheets, all of your homes, all of your rooms. So we're just going to click update there. So that is how you go to apply the EC12 exemption to all of your children. Now, what about those children that you're actually not entitled to claim funding for? So what I'm going to do is just come back to the 24th of January. And this can be done at the same time. So I should have actually been paying attention to who was absent and whether or not I could actually claim funding. So I'm just going to find one. Here we go. This child has an absent child. So let's pretend I haven't got the documentation to enable me to claim this funding. What I need to do here is come here and select no funding. And then you click update. Let's pretend that actually we know that this child has left, then what you would need to do is end that child's enrolment. And to do that, you'd need to take them off the sign-in sheet by selecting exclude here. And you just go through the process, selecting no funding for any of those children that you aren't entitled to claim funding for.